If I'm nimble enough, I'm going to be able to share it here. Doing double duke. Oh, there you go. It says you're live, so we must be. All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to our Woods Hole Film Festival Year 29 Q&A, our filmmaker chat. I'm Alicia Orsini, and I am the president of Women in Film and Video of New England, and I'm so excited to talk to our filmmakers this morning. First off, the Woods Hole Film Festival, you'll be able to screen all of the wonderful films we're going to talk about today from July 25th through Saturday, August 1st, and you can check out the website woodsholefilmfestival.org to get your tickets. But we have some amazing filmmakers that we want to talk to this morning. So first thing we're going to do is go around our little Brady Bunch room and let our filmmakers introduce themselves. So Tony, you are first on my hit list.
Great. Well, thanks for having all of us. My name is Tony Hale. I'm one of the editors for the film Wild and Wool.
Great. And then we have Garrett.
Hi, everyone. My name is Garrett Martin, and I was the cinematographer and editor for Against the Tide.
And then we have Sally.
Yep. Good morning. My name is Sally McGee. I work for the Nature Conservancy, and I'm also the co-director of Against the Tide.
And then we also have Jackie. Jackie, I think you might be on mute, but that's okay.
Is that better?
That's better. Hi, Jackie.
Awesome. Hello, everyone.
So go ahead and tell us, Jackie, which film are you with?
I'm with Against the Tide. I'm featured with a neighboring farm, oyster farm in Mobile, Alabama. So
wonderful. Thanks for being here. And then we have filmmaker Robin.
Hi, I'm Robin, and I'm the creator of the short film Bag.
Wonderful. And joining us just in time is Nicole. Nicole, say hello and which film you're doing or with.
Hi, I'm the director of Lessons from Jeju. Sorry, I'm glad I caught it because it's 6 a.m. Pacific Standard Time here, but I realized it was Eastern Standard, so I'm glad I just made it in the nick of time.
No, that's perfect. We're all just rubbing our eyes, getting some coffee. I know we're from all over the place, but so this is wonderful to have you all here to be able to talk to you about your films. And as somebody who was put to task to interview you all today, I kind of got your films under the title of women in science, and as I was watching the films, it's more than just science and women themes, but really about how we want to walk around and function in this world. And I've really enjoyed your films, but I'd like to go ahead and talk to Sally, because we're Cape Cod based, and your film of course is very close to what we do, a lot of the aquaculture that happens on Cape Cod. So could you, Sally, tell us more about your film, and then we'll bring in some of the voices of the people that helped you put this together.
Yeah, sure. Thanks. So the film we shot last summer, and it's focused on shellfish growers from all over the country who are seeing impacts of climate change on their businesses and want to do something about it. So one of the things that we wanted to do was to be able to share their stories, and this film has been an important way to be able to do that. So the idea of doing this came from a grower up in Maine, Bill Mook, who runs Mook Sea Farm, along with a few other growers who were seeing impacts and said, oh my gosh, we've got to do something about this, and we don't want to reinvent the wheel. So they came to the Nature Conservancy, which is where I work, and said, hey, can you help us out? And we said, absolutely. So Nature Conservancy has been all in on this, and it was just so fun to go visit all of the growers. We visited Jackie, who's on with us today. She was our first stop in Alabama, along with another grower, Dottie Lawley, who's her neighbor that Jackie just mentioned. And I'll tell you, we showed up there and I did not want to leave. It's just such a wonderful place right on Mobile Bay. But Jackie can tell you more about that.
Yeah, Jackie, tell us a little bit about what you do and then we'll talk about what it was like to be filmed doing what you do.
Well, for starters, I actually have a degree in marine science. If you can see, I'm in my lab at work today. But yeah, I got into oyster aquaculture a few years back, thanks to a neighbor, Andy DiPaola. And he has, his farm is called DP's Delights. But he's been a neighbor of mine since I was a child. And he knew that I was very much into all things ocean. And he said, hey, this is a great sustainable way to, not only make a little money, but also to help clean the environment because, oysters filter water. And I just kind of picked it up and went from there. And then we tried to form a co-op, I guess. And that's where I met Dottie. And we attended the Oyster South Symposium, and that's where I met Sally. And I immediately said, yes, let's do this thing. I joined the Shellfish Growers Climate Coalition. I just love everything about it. I love their mission, what we're hoping to achieve. And then she approached us about the film, and she came down, and Dottie's farm is very impressive. It is, her pier is just gigantic, but it makes it perfect to be able to, farm oysters. So I'm excited about what all the film has done so far and where it's going to go from here. But yeah.
So what was that experience like? Because since we're in Woods Hole, we spend a lot of time trying to get scientists to communicate with us effectively, which I think. So for the team that put together this film, you've done a great job. So what was that like, having that camera in your face and being able to do what you do and really explain the science?
I felt like it was not only someone who could effectively communicate exactly what's going on a scientific level, but be able to I grew up a half a mile from where we actually filmed. I grew up there my entire life, and I've seen so many changes, both good and bad, over my lifetime. And to be able to express that, on a personal level and on a scientific level was just amazing. I cannot tell you how appreciative I am of the opportunity to be able to say hey, I am boots on the ground, and I've been here for a very long time, and this is what's going on, and this is how I feel, and maybe we can do something about it. But then also explain the science behind it.
Absolutely. So for Sally and for Jarrett, let's talk about the construction of this film, and Sally, where it came from for you.
Well, it really came from the desire to be able to tell stories from different parts of the country. So we were in Washington State, then we were down in Alabama where Jackie is. We were in Florida on the Gulf Coast and the East Coast, and then up in Maine. We really wanted to tell different stories, but all related to climate impacts that all these farmers, all these business owners are seeing. And it's so much more compelling when it comes from a business owner themselves rather than the Nature Conservancy. Certainly a lot of people listen to the Nature Conservancy, but to hear it from from your neighbor or from someone who you really appreciate the products, you really love the food that they grow for you and that you appreciate. That was the kind of connection that we wanted to be able to make for people who were watching the film. And Garrett did a really great job with the editing, pulling it together from all those locations into one cohesive piece.
So yeah, Garrett, let's talk about your process. Seeing as for documentary or something like this, it's you're doing a lot of the storytelling, weaving with Sally, giving you direction. So what kind of joys and challenges did you have putting this together?
The biggest challenges was how do you take these somewhat different stories from all around the country and make them into one cohesive piece, I think. Because we did film with so many different people, there were so many different elements, and it's trying to figure out which elements you really focus on and how those pieces kind of interconnect. So I think that was probably the hardest challenge is how do you get, I think we filmed, I don't know, how many people did we film with, Sally? Maybe a dozen or so?
Yeah,
And kind of taking all of those different stories and putting those together. I think that was by far the biggest challenge, is just kind of really honing in on what the storyline is, because there's just so many different threads that you could go off of.
Yeah, I know that a lot of it we could circle around that conversation forever, probably with several of our filmmakers in this group. So as I was watching it, I was thinking to myself that this could be a series. Like, I could see myself tuning in, and binge watching this on Netflix. Was that an intentional thing for you? Do you hope to do more of this in the future, or is that a new feedback for you?
It's nice to hear. Garrett's helped us do some additional work with the footage that he shot last summer, and put together some smaller pieces, because there was so much more, obviously, that didn't make it into the film, but that are compelling stories from particular places. So we have those pretty much done, and we'll be sharing those out through nature.org.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
So I want to turn to another filmmaker that we have who's kind of adjacently connected to this, and that's Nicole. I want to talk because you're dealing with shellfish. And but Nicole, tell us about your film, and give us the breadth of what your subject was.
Yeah, I wish, hearing everybody else's film, I wish I got a chance to see them before this chat. I'm very interested to see what you guys have been working on. It sounds really interesting. I did a film called Lessons from Jeju, which was basically following my friend who's a professional spearfisher from Hawaii. She was 39 at the time, pregnant with her first child. And so we went out when she was 6 months pregnant to this place called Jeju, which is an island off of South Korea, to meet with a group of women known as the Haenyeo, which is like an all-female diving collective of women divers that have been doing it for thousands of years. And one thing that we were really interested in is how, so the women, the Haenyeo, are regarded as Korea's first working mothers, and they collect things like, they'll sometimes farm seaweed. When we were there, they were really looking for horn conch. They also sometimes go for abalone, so it's a lot of shellfish. Spearfishing is not allowed in Korea, so they don't really do that. But it's been a traditional way of life for, it's documented thousands of years ago or so. Now there's about 4,000 women that still do it on the island of Jeju, and largely because, and I won't get into all the minutia of it, but because of the history of where Korea was versus where it is now, a lot of the young women have a lot more different opportunities than being, free divers and fisher women. And so they're really like the last generation, and I'd seen other pieces that were really focused on that. But one thing that really struck me was the woman that I went out with. Her name is Kimmy Warner. She's a big role model of mine because I'm a free diver as well. And I work in the outdoor space and the adventure world, and her struggles with how to balance being a mother while also, maintaining this relationship to the ocean was really interesting to me. And, she was posting these pictures on Instagram or whatever, or very early on when she announced that she was pregnant. She's getting a lot of slack from, in particular, men about, you can't free dive while you're pregnant, you can't, do these things, you're jeopardy. And there's no Western, doctrine, there's no Western doctor that basically says you can or can't do this. It's just unknown. And she just found herself naturally gravitating towards the Haenyeo and the Ama, which are these traditional kind of cultures that have been diving mothers for a long time. And I was just like, oh, that's such an incredible story. It's like their wisdom does not exist besides, these kind of cultures. And so it was really awesome opportunity to go out there. We spent about a week with them. And, we were worried about is this going to be something that is preserved from a cultural perspective? And is this like a Disneyland version of what these women are, And we were totally wrong. They were incredible, badass Navy SEALs, women in their 60s through 80s, still maintaining their connection to the ocean, but also just hobbling on land with these 60-pound sacks of conch, but then they get in the water and they're just mobile as can be. And it it was a really cool experience. So I'm happy. I hope you guys get to check out the film, because it's to me, it's something from, you know, a lot of these questions of like how to balance being a mom and getting older and a family while also this life of adventure in the ocean. And I think it was just a unique way for us to kind of explore that topic in our own way, which is such like a weird niche world of like spearfishing and the ocean stuff. So, but maybe people, you know, that like the ocean on this call may enjoy it as well.
Well, I'm wondering, just from Sally and from Jackie, if you're hearing some themes that maybe resonate with you.
Oh, absolutely.
I certainly, as I was watching the film, both Against the Tide and Juju, just the concepts of not only what does it motherhood mean, but what does working womanhood mean? And you know, seeing in Against the Tide so many women doing their thing, and then that seemed very familiar, but then in Nicole, in your film, this was a culture that was not familiar to me, but at the same time felt very real, felt very like there was something deep inside, like, yes, everything
Yeah.
about this, yeah.
Yeah, I felt the same way. I think, you know, like so often in our society, like you're kind of heralded as this like woman that's like alone and independent, doing your thing and like doing these awesome things. Like when you do kind of, when you're active in the scientific world, when you're active in the exploration world. But what was really cool to me was meeting these ladies that have been doing this forever. It's just their way of life. It's just the, you know, it's not this, it's not this thing of specialness about them. It's just a part of who they are. And like one thing that I was really drawn to was it wasn't just an individual diver. It wasn't an individual athlete that kind of like was different than everyone else. It was all about the sisterhood. So it was about how they all supported each other. And that was the key to their success, was having each other and being able to lift each other up. And so I thought that was just a really great lesson for, you know, women in modern times in terms of like how we balance things, of being able to be there for each other. And I just thought it really comforting, because you think that, you know, you're special in the sense, but you realize like these women have been just doing their thing for so long and just so incredibly badass. And on top of that, like are being all doing this for their children. And so yeah, it was a good piece to like process and really develop like these ideas of like how balance, you know, like what is this kind of life that you want to set that is, you know, one that is satisfying your goals and hunger for all these different things related to the ocean, but also delivering on your like family, personal connections in a real way, you know? So it was cool. Hopefully that made sense.
I think you're talking to the right group here.
Yeah. Again, it's like 6 o'clock in the morning. I was like just spattering out.
Well, I want to take a turn and go from the ocean to the mountains. So Tony, I'm coming to you to talk about Wild and Wool, and you know, we're talking about women in these films, and well, I know you're the editor, correct?
Yeah, that's right.
I wanted to say right off the top, to talk a little bit about mechanics of filmmaking. I often talk to students and I harp on them about their audio, and I harp on about the design in their audio. And you have these beautiful opening shots and that click, and you don't know what the click is until you get the shot of the two women with their gosh, I don't even know what they're called, the radio signaling.
Yeah.
Could you talk a little bit more about that?
I'm really glad that worked for you, because when I put that together, I was thinking, well, this is kind of weird, but hopefully it's a good hook.
It's textbook hook for me.
Oh, great, wonderful. Yeah, you know, I love sound design, and we did have a sound designer on it. Who did some really great work, I think. But yeah, that was just sort of what's going to show us our best imagery right up front, but still not just be just beautiful imagery. That's going to be a hook into the story, which is the people and the scientific investigation, and get our characters and our, you know, the subjects of the sheep in the mountains in there right away. So I'm glad that worked.
Well, tell us a little bit more about your characters and about their relationship to, well, the whole scope of the film. So you're you know, we're I said moving from the ocean to sheep.
Yeah, these scientists and researchers are out there doing amazing work. researching why these wild sheep populations have been dwindling. And the film's very much about the intersection of that work and also domestic sheep farmers trying to share the land with European sheep, and how, with respect to everyone's needs, that the land can't always support everyone's needs, and how we need to figure out a way to all work together. So that's sort of the two stories that we wanted to tell, how they intersect, because each one is a lot simpler when you tell it on its own, but when they have to share limited resources, finite space, it gets more complicated. But the women in science who are out there investigating these sheep, they were really amazing to follow. And we have sort of different generations, people who are foundational in the work and mid-career scientists and students who are just starting, kind of all overlapping in the field there. And it follows them over the course of a year as they investigate the cycle from the rut to the birthing season, through the summer, back to the rut the next year.
Yeah, the dynamic between the two of them and talking about, what do you think about, does that look good? Oh yeah, that lamb looks good. She's smiling, those little conversations were nice.
Yeah.
I'm wondering too, since you are an editor, I'll ask you the same question I asked of Garrett. What were your joys and what were your challenges in putting together this piece?
Yeah, well, having an insane amount of most adorable lamb footage was not a problem, really. To just pull selects on, oh, that one's cute, that one's cuter, that one's even cuter. So that was nice. And then, it's a very difficult subject when they get sick. So that, it's hard. I think one of the more challenging storytelling aspects was how to weave in the two stories sympathetically and not let one detract too much from the other. We were trying to tell a story about a disease, so how much science do you get into? That's always a question. You don't want to dumb down the science, but it's a short film. How much can you really get into? And for scientists, and anyone who edits scientists knows, they're not willing to give in. They don't want to talk in absolutes. They don't want to dumb down the science, and which I respect. So, how do you communicate that in a way that's still going to resonate?
And I feel like you certainly accomplished that. And again, as I was watching these films, all of your films as a block, it seemed like there were threads between all of these things. The respect of the land. You had some what would have been considered very controversial voices of the farming community, but they were sympathetic.
I'm glad. It's when you listen to someone's whole life story, they give this passionate interview. I feel like you need to at least put it in the context of what their life story is, and give it some respect because they've been doing it for generations. So yeah, that's a balance.
Yeah, and you could definitely feel the balance in there. And I want to now come to our of this group. For me, this is a little bit different. Robin, your film is not a documentary, is essentially a narrative of sorts. Yeah. But also is an animation. Tell us about Bag.
So Bag is a movie that I made entirely out of cardboard. And so it's actually puppetry technically, although it falls into the animation category. It's not stop motion, but it looks like it. But I found puppetry a lot easier. And so everything's made out of cardboard in this film except for this one plastic bag. And the journey, the film basically tracks this one plastic bag from being thrown into the trash and then through thousands of years as the climate changes and civilizations rise and fall, and the bag remains the same because it doesn't decompose because it's made of plastic. Yeah.
Well, where did this, concept come to you outside of just, some things that we encounter in our everyday lives?
It's actually part of a much larger project. I'm a puppet designer and theater maker, and I've been working on an immersive theater piece called The Plastic Bag Store for many years. And it's a it was actually set to premiere 3 days before the shutdown in Times Square. But it's a fake grocery store that looks like a real grocery store, but everything inside is made of plastic bags. So I've made all of the meat, all of the produce, all of the deli, everything's made out of discarded plastic bags and other kinds of single-use plastic trash. And then that installation, all of the grocery shelves and cases, everything transforms into an immersive puppet theater. And there's a long narrative. It's like a play that's takes place in the ancient past, the present day, and the far off future, and it is about sort of the permanence of artifacts and the misinterpretation of artifacts, and people in the future excavating all of our plastic trash and sort of misinterpreting its significance and misinterpreting its function of all of these things that we're leaving behind. And so Bag was actually just a very quick part of that narrative. The other parts of the story are told in different styles of puppetry, not all this cardboard style. So Bag is just a part of that. Yeah, and I've been working with cardboard for many years. I worked with the installation collective called the Cardboard Institute of Technology, and we would build these cardboard worlds. And then I made a cardboard Fitzcarraldo short a few years ago called Fitz Cardboard Aldo, and the accompanying Corrugation of Dreams. And so yeah, Bag seemed like the natural progression.
Wait a minute, I want to go back. Say the institute again.
Cardboard Institute of Technology.
So, all right, I don't know who wants to take this on, but we need a documentary about this.
Oh, that would be great.
Great, you go. We'll talk later, and we'll make a decision on that. Because of course, as I'm watching this, the cardboard in this, you've created the entire world out of cardboard, and I'm looking at it and going, "Oh my God, the work that went into this very intricate cardboard landscape." How much? Talks about the mechanics of that.
Well, yeah, it does take a long time to create these worlds, but because I'm sort of working by myself, there's a lot of flexibility, and so I can just be in the studio, make something and shoot it, and then if it doesn't work, I can just remake it. There's something great about the flexibility of the materials, and the freeness of the materials, like the cost wise, that I can try something and then find it doesn't work and then just start over. And it's also allows me to really like change scale, like everything changes scale constantly, and it's hard to tell because it's on film, but like, you know, if I need to shoot a detailed moment, it doesn't actually have to be small. I can build those details however big I want so that they look right on camera.
Well, it was funny because there's some great shots in Wild and Wool where you're really high up and it almost seems like a diagram of, you know, tiny sheep. And then I went back and I was watching Bag and I was like, oh, there's the same kind of constructed shot where things are up above and you know, you do, you know, as somebody who knows how the sausage is made, you know, you're like, oh, well, there's this thing here. Oh, isn't that great? The way you thought about your camera angles and how you wanted to tell the story of that bag moving through the world that you had to create. And I thought that was just fascinating.
Yeah, it was definitely fun to experiment with all that stuff. And I have no training in the film world. I come from the theater world. I just kind of got a camera and have been just kind of figuring it out. So I'm, for better or worse, not bound by any rules or any information, basically. So I just have the ability to try things and hope that they work. Yeah.
I love that. And Sally, I want to come back to you because, you know, as something that Robin said there, she doesn't come traditionally out of the film world. You don't traditionally come out of the film world either with your background. You have multiple things that you do.
Yeah, no, this was the first film that I'd worked on ever. You know, the project I've been working on, this Shellfish Growers Climate Coalition, came about in part because I was a shellfish farmer myself for several years. And so I knew all these people, and then it kind of folded into my day job with the Nature Conservancy, and then kind of the need and the opportunity and the encouragement by colleagues to tell stories in a different kind of way, in a longer format kind of way, is how we ended up coming to the film. Like I said before, it was just so enlightening to spend time with these people on their farms. The only thing I wish is that we could have spent more time in each place, because they were all so unique, but then still experiencing the same kind of things. We hear the same kind of things in terms of climate change impacts that they're experiencing. It might be a little different in the Gulf of Mexico than it is in the Gulf of Maine, but they're all experiencing it. The other thing that's been really great is bringing all these people together through the film, and through the coalition. So it's kind of a new community of people who have a shared interest and shared commitment to doing something about climate change, because they're seeing it themselves.
I'm wondering too, just Nicole, as I wanted to ask you, how much did climate change come to play in your conversations? Because there was a moment I wanted to ask you about where they found an abalone. Is it because that's a rare find, or is that something that's disappearing? What was that about?
The abalone in particular in that instance was just out of season. So it was kind of irregular find. But that being said, we talked to them a bit about some of the climate issues that they're seeing based on their experience being underwater for 5 hours a day. And the horned conch seems to be doing okay, but what they said was that they're seeing lots of different kinds of fish. And so that's obviously very anecdotal. But they were seeing lots of different types of fish, as well as just like weird things that they had never seen before. And so whether that be to warming waters and different distributions and whatnot, but the shellfish that they were catching, they didn't really talk about any kind of like weaning populations. But yeah, that was really it. And then they also kind of were worried about pollution as well. But they were definitely more kind of like offhand comments than they were kind of like measured things over this amount of years or whatever, which I think is always a great place to start, because I'm sure there's a lot to what they're saying.
Well, to your point, they're underwater for 5 hours a day. They, the subjection against the tides, they're living and breathing, and this is their livelihood.
Yeah,
they're almost kind of like the great people to talk to about what have you seen over time, and I want to know more about them, and that's I guess a great thing in filmmaking is that it leaves you wanting more. I want to know.
That was something. I mean, the short, we made it 13 minutes because it was a piece for Patagonia, and it was very focused on the motherhood aspect of it. But there's a part of me that just wishes we could have made it a whole feature length. And that was a lot of the feedback that we got from people, was like, why did it end there? And there's, to be honest, so much to unpack. One thing that I wish we got into that I don't think we did a really great job of, mostly because of the timing of it all, was the why, as to why are these the women that are the ones that are diving. And it's it's related to a really troubled and dark history on Jeju. There's lots of wars, lots of different reasons of why the women were the only ones doing it, and that's something that I wish we could have explored a bit more in the film. But there's this book. It's called The Island of Sea Women. This writer named Lisa C. And I joked with her because she reached out to me when the film came out, and I was like, really, our film needs to be watched in conjunction with her book, because you have such more of an appreciation for how hard these ladies have had to work their entire life, with understanding the history that's behind it, besides these like amazing images of them. When you understand like why they are so wrinkled and why they are so hardened, your heart just goes out to them and the work they're doing a little bit more, So that's something I wish we could have done and explored a bit. But yeah, there's definitely, I feel like, just a little scratch of the surface of what this could be with them.
So yeah, it's, I mean, yeah, when you watch a 13-minute film about like several subjects that you want to dive into, it leaves you wanting, like, what's the next step, and wanting to do some more research. So I love the idea of, like, let's have a companion reading to go along.
Yeah, we were reading the book while we were there, and we were joking that it's the most ultimate book club, to be there reading it, and it was awesome.
Well, Tony, with Wild and Wool, I kind of found myself doing the same sort of thing where I want to know where does it stand for these. I know that in recent memory we've had a lot of talk about the BLM, what we do for land management and resources, and of course these things happening on land, happening on the ocean. I'm wondering where things are. Are there things that were left on the table for you guys as filmmakers as well?
Yeah, there always is. It's the first edit was like 3 times longer, and I was like, it's fine, it's done. So yeah, there's always more things. I think to kind of piggyback off of before, it is a bit of an advocacy piece that was designed to communicate with people who might be a little more resistant to hearing the message, which is part of why we included so much of the other stories to kind of try to bring people to the table. So with any luck, that is where it's going. And as the management issues evolve, that something like this is a way to bring people to the table to hear each other's stories. So we'll see.
Yeah. I'm wondering too, from for Against the Tide, so Garrett, with things that you wanted to probably keep in the film, and like I said, as I'm watching it, I'm thinking it's a series, and Sally, you can chime in on this as well, but from putting it together, are there, as we like to say, the darlings we have to kill to get across? What kind of things were you hoping that might come across when you're putting this together?
I don't know if I can think of specific things, but I think just including more characters. Like there were several, and I think Sally would agree with this, like other great characters that we filmed with that really added to the story, but we just could not include them because of time constraints. So I think that was probably the hardest thing, is just not including some of those people that also had some really great visuals too, because we really wanted to focus on having footage shot in specific places and keeping you in that place to connect you to it. So we didn't want to grab footage from another location and switch it over, even if it was the same state. So I think that was the most frustrating thing, is like having some great footage and just not really being able to even touch it.
Right. And when you have, it's kind of like a blessing and a curse when you have just an abundance of voices and footage. How do you boil that down?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Yeah,
sure.
we were in we spent some time in Apalachicola, Florida, where I'd never been before, and I just loved it. It's just a fantastic place. So far off the beaten track. Actually, maybe I should say it's not such a great place. Don't go there. So it stays that way. But just we met dozens of just really great people there. And when I look at the film and look at some of the shorter pieces that we put together, they all had their own stories about how important shellfish farming is to them personally, for their families. And I mean, we could have done a whole thing just on shellfish in Apalachicola for sure.
Which, watching the film, I didn't even associate shellfishing with those areas. And Jackie, I'm sure that where you are as well, and of course I've got a Cape Cod centric mind, so it was a nice look to say, oh, this is a conversation that's happening around in other places as well. And Jackie, I'm wondering, just for you, have you gotten feedback on that as part of the coalition as featured in this film?
Feedback on
Just
shellfish.
how universal these issues really are.
Oh yes, absolutely. We went to Washington in March, just before the virus outbreak, and it was very, I don't know, it was nice to have a bunch of like-minded people together and discuss, like, spending time with the other farmers in the coalition and discussing like issues from gear failure to environmental issues and, you know, mortality events and things of that sort, like stuff that oyster farmers discuss, and realize that we're dealing with the same thing across the board, across the country. You know, it was nice, but it was also kind of disheartening at times. But yeah.
And I don't know particularly about what, you know, the research and conversations you're having, and maybe you can speak a little bit to it, but after watching Bag and having to watch you know, all of your films put together, and all I can think is, so we talk about plastics in our water constantly, and, you know, first of all, so Robin, I'm wondering if there's you know, what kind of feedback had you been getting as well from your film about, oh, this plastic bag, we have bag bans in places. You know, we're talking about how do those plastics end up in our fish and end up in our food and in our water? So I'm wondering more about the commentary from a reaction from your film on those things.
Yeah, I think definitely I didn't necessarily want to bum people out, but I think my film can bum people out. I just kind of wanted to more give a context in time to the duration of some of these items and how permanent they are once they kind of once they're sort of in away or wherever that is. And yeah, just sort of like give context and just that the idea that you throw that bag away, it's not really away, it's just gonna like circle the globe or whatever, or like, you know, for hundreds or maybe thousands of years, depending. Yeah, but yeah, it can be very overwhelming, and it's often as much as I like enjoy my own artistic process, I often have to like, you know, I use reference images when I'm sculpting something, and so I have to look at terrible things sometimes, you know. But I also, a big part of my project about Plastic Bag Store and this film is that I do think that oftentimes, you know, images of sea turtles choking on plastic bags and like are a little bit too much for people to look at, and often, you know, when they come up on my Instagram feed or whatever, people I follow, my instinct is to just like swipe past because I can't look, I can't deal, because it hurts too much. So kind of one of my goals with this project is to create something that you want to look at, that's something that's like very visually rich, or like the texture of the animation and the cardboard and the sets and stuff that you would actually like, you want to engage with and you want to keep watching. And it sort of allows for hopefully some of these ideas to sink in instead of being like, whoa, yeah, whoa, can't think about that, can't deal with that. That you would sit down and watch a whole film about it, that it would hopefully have a longer, deeper impact.
Well, I definitely feel like it's not depressing to sit through it all. It's a cautionary tale, and it was very enjoyable. So I think you accomplished what you set out to do. We've got, our time is short, so what I would like to do is take a moment to just go around the room and just for our watching audience who are going to be buying tickets to watch films next week, to just say, you know, again, the name of your film and maybe just a one line why you should absolutely engage with your film. So I'll put you right on the spot. I'm going to go to Sally.
Yeah, so the film is Against the Tide, Shellfish Growers Push Back on Climate. And you should watch it if you've ever enjoyed a raw bar, so you can meet the people who made your afternoon even more special with a fabulous raw bar. They're great people all over the country.
I love it. Garrett, what's your one line of why we should watch Against the Tide?
Kind of going off of that, I feel like most people don't have a clue what aquaculture is or what shellfish farming actually entails. So I think it's just a great, even educational piece just to learn more about the people that are on the front lines making this food and kind of seeing behind the scenes of how that process goes.
Great, thank you. And Jackie?
Yeah, if you care anything about the ocean, watch this film, because it really is every aspect of it, from seafood and shellfish growers to, policy. So
Excellent. All right, Tony, coming to you.
The film is Wild and Wool, and if you want to learn more about and just witness the majesty of an iconic species for the continent, get into the mountains and see some of those amazing landscapes, and learn about some amazing work people are doing. I hope you check out the film. And I just also have to say, Robin, I got a ticket to your plastic store show in Times Square. So when it reopens,
Yes.
I'll be there.
Okay.
Well, Robin, tell us why we should watch Bag.
The film is Bag, and you should watch Bag if you've ever used a plastic bag, or if you want a completely unscientific animation of what might happen to your plastic bag in the future.
Beautiful. All right, and Nicole.
My film is Lessons from Jeju, and I hope you check it out. I think everyone should watch it. Not only is it because it's a story about motherhood and badass women, but also I think it's just a story about people that had to earn it in the ocean in ways that we'll never have to. And so it's just, it's cool culture that a lot of people aren't familiar with, and hopefully makes you feel a little bit grateful for what we have today.
Wonderful. I want to thank all of you for taking some time, some of you very early, to chat with us this morning. Hey, it's the 29th Woods Hole Film Festival. I want to remind our audience that you can start viewing films from Saturday, July 25th through Saturday, August 1st. Get your tickets at woodsholefilmfestival.org. Filmmakers, thank you so much, and we look forward to following everything you do.
Thank you.
Having us.
Bye-bye.